The page was blank, but when Elias tilted it toward the light, the words began to appear, as if someone was writing them in that very moment. Only it wasn't ink. It was heat. A language carved into temperature, not paper. And the sentence that surfaced simply read, "You've already read it. Never read it again." But who wrote that? How can ink vanish and reappear based on the reader? And the real question is, how did the manuscript know he would be the one to find it? Some truths were never lost. They were hidden. My name is Dr. Elias Ward, and for more than 2 decades I've been chasing clues that were never meant to be found. Symbols that don't belong, statues that seem to know too much, and words that appear when no one ever wrote them. Some call it madness and others coincidence. But if you've come this far, it means you're searching too, for what was forgotten, or worse, hidden. Here every episode is a clue, every symbol a story waiting to be told, and every discovery might not be mine alone. It could be yours too. The Cryptologist. Don't follow the obvious path. Follow the impossible. He arrived late in the afternoon, just as the sunlight was still casting gold over the visible ruins of the ancient village of Kekova on Turkey's southern coast. The small boat rocked gently on the calm sea, and the pilot, a quiet man named Adam, stared at the horizon like someone who'd seen that scene 1,000 times. Elias, however, wasn't looking out. He was looking at the paper. The map he had received days earlier, without a sender, marked with a single coordinate and one handwritten sentence in the bottom corner. What was erased is still there. There was something unsettling about the place. The sunken village wasn't a secret to local archaeologists. Historical accounts mentioned it had sunk after an earthquake in the 13th century, and its remnants were still visible beneath the clear water. But what Elias was searching for wasn't part of any official record. Not in Ottoman manuscripts, not in academic journals, not even in forgotten libraries. The coordinates on the map pointed to one exact spot, away from the tourist paths, where Adam stopped the boat without asking questions. "Here," he said, handing Elias a metal cylinder with a pressure gauge on top. "What you're looking for doesn't like light. You'll need this." Elias took the device, pulled on the diving suit, and prepared himself. The sun was dropping fast, and soon the sea would turn black. He descended slowly, feeling the temperature shift with each meter. Fish scattered from his shadow, and the beams of the dying light faded above him like curtains closing. The deeper he went, the quieter everything became. And then he saw it. Tucked between collapsed stone walls and coral-covered beams, hidden from casual divers, was a sealed chamber, barely visible, camouflaged by time and salt. But the edges were too clean, the angle too exact. It wasn't natural erosion. This had been built to hide something. He hovered for a moment, reading the contours, tracing the symbols carved faintly into the stone. They weren't in any script he recognized immediately, but they weren't random. There was structure, balance, intention. He activated the cutter on his wrist, a compact underwater laser, and carefully opened a slit along the top of the stone panel. Air bubbles shot out, the pressure dropped slightly, and he waited, then reached in. The object was wrapped in layers of what looked like soaked papyrus, encased in an oily resin. It slid out too easily, like it had been waiting. He placed it in the sealed compartment of his diving bag and began the slow ascent, his heart beating faster than the current around him. Back on the boat, Adam didn't ask questions. He handed Elias a towel, then turned the engine toward shore. "Whatever you found," he said finally, "don't open it here. Not near the sea." Elias nodded. He already knew. The air around the object felt dense, as if it wasn't just waterlogged, as if it carried weight beyond matter. That night, in a stone guest house built into the hillside above the village, Elias placed the bundle on the wooden table. He cut through the resin, peeled back the layers. Inside was a single book, no thicker than a finger. Its cover was blackened with time, cracked at the spine but intact. He expected to see calligraphy, ink stains, water damage. Instead, he saw nothing. The pages were blank, completely. For a moment, he thought it was a hoax. But then, he remembered the words. What was erased is still there. He tilted the page gently toward the light of the lamp. Nothing changed. He adjusted the angle again, still blank. Then he shifted the lamp closer, almost touching the page. That's when the letters began to appear. Slowly, like smoke rising through glass, words began to take shape. First faint, then clearer. The ink wasn't black. It wasn't even visible in the usual sense. It was warmth, heat-sensitive markings, a language not written in pigment, but in temperature. He leaned closer. The first sentence read, "You've already read." This time he didn't move. The second, "Never read it again." Elias didn't sleep. The book sat on the table like a living thing, reacting to heat, to proximity, to attention. Every time he looked away, the words would slowly fade. But when he leaned in, they returned, not always the same, not always in the same place. As if the manuscript wasn't revealing content, but reacting to observation. At dawn, he took it outside, wrapped tightly in cloth, and walked down toward the harbor. Adam was already there, crouched by the boat, mending a coil of rope. Without turning, he said, "It changed you, didn't it?" Elias hesitated before answering. "What do you know about this place?" Adam stood up, wiped his hands, and looked at him directly. "More than I should, and less than I want to." They took the boat inland, upriver through narrow channels flanked by reeds and stone. Elias kept the book on his lap, wrapped again as if trying to muffle its presence. He didn't like how it felt. Not dangerous, just aware. They stopped near the ruins of an old monastery, mostly collapsed, overgrown with vines. Adam led him into a low chamber built into the hillside. "This is where he studied it," he said. Elias looked around. "Who?" Adam didn't answer right away. He pointed to a carved niche in the wall. "My grandfather. He was a linguist, like you." There were scattered notes, yellowed with age, written in Turkish, Greek, and something Elias couldn't identify. Sketches of symbols, diagrams, of temperature shifts. One phrase appeared several times, "Tek okuma hakkı," only one reading aloud. Elias unwrapped the book. Adam stepped back instinctively. "He tried to read it twice," he said softly. After the second time, he stopped speaking. He lived another 3 years, never said another word. Elias felt a pulse of something cold pass through his chest. Not fear, recognition. He had read the first lines the night before. Was that already his one read? He opened the book slowly. The pages were blank again. He turned to the first page, brought his breath close to the paper. Letters emerged, but they weren't the same as before. The first time, the sentences had spoken in generalities like warnings. Now they were personal. "You carry a name that is not yours," the page said. Elias froze. That wasn't a reference to research. That was about his past. Something buried, something almost no one alive knew. He turned the page. "You followed ruins to avoid your own." Another page. "You still don't believe why your mother left, but the book does." He closed it. Hard. Adam looked pale. "It's talking to you." Elias nodded slowly. "It's not a text. It's a mirror." They stood in silence. The wind shifted slightly. rustling the vines outside. Elias paced, thinking. If it changes for every reader, he said, then it's not preserving knowledge, it's delivering it, selectively, according to the reader's mind, maybe even their past. Adam reached into a clay pot and pulled out a faded photograph. A man, thin, with dark eyes and a lined face. That's him, he said. He called it the silent scribe, said it doesn't write until someone listens. Elias looked again at the book. He was right. He took a breath. And now it's listening to me. He decided to run one last test. He took a blank sheet of paper, laid it over the open page, and gently heated the paper with a lighter from underneath. Words formed, faint, fractured, but legible. It was a language not just coded in heat, but also in presence. Alive. Dialogue, not a record, and that meant one thing. The more he tried to extract, the more unstable the text would become. Elias stood up. I have to try again. I need to see if I can stabilize the text. Map it. Create a system. Adam shook his head. That's what he said too, just before everything went quiet. Elias didn't answer, but the idea had already taken root. One read. But what if it wasn't about pages? What if the manuscript could feel the intention to reread, and what would happen if it didn't want to be read again? That night, Elias spread the pages of the book on a cloth, separating them gently. It wasn't meant to come apart, but it had. The spine had cracked the moment he closed it too fast. But what worried him wasn't the damage. It was the silence. Since then, nothing had reappeared. No letters, no phrases, just blank parchment, cool to the touch. He tried everything, light, heat, breath, even placing the pages back in sequence, but the manuscript stayed silent. Not erased, just refusing. Elias sat for hours staring at it, his thoughts circling darker memories. What the book had written earlier wasn't coincidence. It knew. You still don't believe why your mother left. He hadn't said her name in over a decade, had never spoken about her departure, not even in interviews, not in lectures, not in private letters. That one sentence hit harder than any cipher he'd cracked in his life. He reached for his notebook and began transcribing everything he remembered from the first reading. He wrote from memory, line by line, but something felt off. The words he recalled didn't align perfectly with the tone. Had the manuscript adapted mid-sentence? Was it changing even as he read? The door creaked. Adam entered quietly, carrying a tray with tea and a single candle. You haven't slept, he said, placing the tray down. Elias didn't respond. It's not. Letting me back in, he said finally. It's punishing me. Adam sat across from him, looking at the scattered pages. He said the same thing at my grandfather. He read it once and something opened, but when he tried again, he paused, eyes low. He stopped. Eating, talking, responding. It's like the book didn't just silence him, it rewrote him. Elias studied Adam for a moment. Why keep it hidden all these years? My family was afraid, he answered, not of what it says, of who it chooses. That sentence landed heavy. Elias leaned back, the candlelight dancing across the walls. I'm not special, I just followed a map. Adam shook his head. It didn't send you a map, it had sent you your map. You didn't find the book. The book found you. Elias opened one of the pages again, slowly, still blank. But now something had changed. The surface was colder, as if warning him. He thought about the old carving on the chamber wall underwater, the one with the unfamiliar symbols. He pulled out a sketch he had made earlier, 5 shapes, a loop, a sharp diagonal, a square missing one side, a mirrored spiral, and a final symbol that resembled a keyhole. He hadn't been able to translate them. Until now. He compared the shapes to a section of the book where faint markings had once appeared. They matched, not just in form but in sequence. It was a lock, and he had triggered it. A page lifted on its own. Elias froze. The parchment had curled upward, no draft, no wind. A new sentence appeared, slow and deliberate. "You shouldn't have..." "Read it." Adam stood up, backing away. Another line formed. "This knowledge doesn't want to stay with you." Elias stared, his breath shallow. "It's not a warning," he whispered. "It's an instruction." Suddenly, one of the previously blank pages began to burn. No flames, no smoke, just darkening, as if scorched from within. Letters formed in reverse, unreadable, then vanished again. The book wasn't just hiding information, it was retracting it. It was erasing the reader. Elias stepped back. The table trembled slightly, the candle flickering as if the air pressure had shifted. Adam whispered, "Do you feel that?" "Yes, not fear, loss." He realized something deeply unsettling. The words he had written earlier, transcribed from memory. He no longer remembered writing them. He opened his notebook. The sentences were there, but they felt foreign, like reading someone else's thoughts. The book wasn't trying to protect its content. It was trying to protect the world from the impact of that content, and Elias had gone too far. He reached out to close the cover again, carefully this time. But the book had already gone still. The pages inert, the temperature around it neutral. And yet, in the quiet, he heard it. Not a voice, not a sound, but a certainty. Some part of him was already gone. Elias had always believed that repetition was a tool for understanding. That decoding anything, a language, a culture, a wound, required going back to it over and over again until it gave up its secrets. But this book punished repetition. He had tried once more that morning. Just once. He hadn't even meant to. He was simply tracing one of the faint characters that had appeared the night before, trying to understand its structure. But the moment his finger reached the page, the ink recoiled, as if shrinking from memory. The symbol vanished, and in its place something else emerged. Not a phrase, not even a sentence. A question. "Why did you look again?" Not written, imposed. A pressure inside his skull, a question that felt implanted. Elias stumbled back, knocking over a chair. Adam rushed in from outside, where he'd been boiling water. What happened? Elias held the book like it was a live animal. His voice was low, almost broken. "It doesn't want to be remembered." Adam looked at him for a long time. "Neither did he said finally. Elias knew who he meant. The grandfather. He sat on the edge of the bed, trembling. He couldn't explain it, not fully, but he could feel it, like trying to recall a dream that suddenly vanishes the moment you speak it aloud. Something was being erased, not just from paper, so from him. He pulled out his notebook to double-check a set of glyphs he'd copied the night before. Page 27, lower left corner. They should have been there. But instead, he found a note in his own handwriting, but written with a hesitation he didn't recognize. If you're reading this, you already forgot what was here. He didn't remember writing that. He turned the page. There, in bold strokes, as if scrawled under stress, "Do not return to page 4. His stomach tightened. He turned back to page 4 blank. He didn't even remember what had been there in the first place. "Adam," he said, "I need something to record this with. Audio, voice." Adam hesitated. "You think your voice will hold what your mind can't? It's not about remembering," Elias said. "It's about witnessing. Adem brought him a small tape recorder, one of those used by fishermen to log routes and currents. Elias pressed record and began speaking aloud everything he could remember. The warning phrases, the heat-reactive ink, the first moment the text responded to him. But as he spoke, his words began to tangle. He would reach for a sentence, and midway through the meaning would evaporate. Not confusion, extraction. As if the act of speaking it triggered deletion. "Did you hear that?" Elias asked suddenly. Adem looked at him. "Hear what?" "I just said a sentence about the keyhole symbol, and you didn't hear it?" "You were silent," Adem said. "You looked like you were thinking, but you didn't speak." Elias felt a cold line crawl down his spine. It was no longer just the book. It was inside now. The mechanism wasn't just defending the content, it was regulating cognition, policing intent, preventing permanence. He looked at the recorder. The tape had stopped. Not ejected, not rewound, just blank. As if the audio itself had been preemptively removed, he opened the battery compartment. Still full, still powered. Nothing wrong, except there was no recording. As if the machine had been caught in the same logic trap. He stared at the manuscript again. This time he didn't try to read it. He just sat with it, and for a moment he felt something strange. Not fear, not reverence, but loneliness. As if the book wasn't protecting itself out of arrogance, but desperation. As if it had been made not to be decoded, but to be forgotten. A kind of caged or grave. Elias stood up. "We need to take it back." Adem blinked. "Back where?" "To the chamber. Underwater." "Why?" Elias didn't answer right away, because part of him couldn't remember the reason, and that terrified him more than anything. They returned to the chamber just before nightfall. The sea was calm, but the wind above it wasn't. Something in the air had shifted. Elias didn't speak during the trip. He held the wrapped manuscript on his lap, not looking at it, not thinking about it, or rather trying not to. Because every time his mind drifted toward a specific memory, it would feel like it dissolved at the edges. Like a photograph caught in flame, curling slowly from the corners. Adem steered the boat without asking questions. He knew. He had seen this before. The descent was slower this time, more deliberate. Elias moved through the water like someone retracing steps he never should have taken. The chamber was still there, waiting, untouched. The slit he had carved on the first day was visible, the seal weakened. The symbols above the entrance seemed to glow differently now, not from light but from awareness. As if the structure itself knew he was coming back, he placed the manuscript inside, but this time he didn't seal it. He added something, a page of his own notes, blank, written in invisible ink, a final gesture, or a warning. A way to say, someone came here and chose not to keep what he found. On the way back up he felt weightless but not free, just suspended. Like a message halfway erased. Back on shore they didn't speak at first. The wind had picked up. The village looked older than before, or maybe Elias had changed. Inside the guest house he sat at the table, opened his notebook and turned to the last pages. There were scribbles, words that didn't make sense, diagrams that had lost their meaning. He couldn't remember drawing them, but his handwriting was there. At the bottom of the final page, in red ink he didn't recall using, was a single line. "It only stays if you never speak it." He read it twice, and then forgot what it meant. He looked out the window. Adem stood by the cliff facing the sea. Elias stepped outside, walked toward him. "Do you remember what it said?" he asked. Adem turned slowly. "No," he said, "but I remember that I wanted to." That was enough. Some truths, Elias realized, weren't made to be preserved, Not because they were dangerous, but because they were designed to fade, to exist only once, like a breath, like a name whispered into a storm. Maybe that was the point. Not everything forgotten is lost. Some things are meant to disappear because if they stayed, they would erase everything else. And so, he let it go, but deep down he knew. The manuscript wasn't gone, it was waiting again for the next reader. What do you do with a truth you can't hold? Do you fight to keep it, or choose to forget? Maybe that's why some pages choose to vanish, not because they're lost, but because someone somewhere is still trying to remember. And if these things find us once, maybe they will again. Maybe the next manuscript is already out there, waiting for the wrong person or the right one.